evil queen in town.
I'm the fairest of them all, until you cross me.
Ladies, I'm starting a charity to help raise money for dwarves because they need our help because they're not real people.
I cannot believe she did that. Dwarves are my thing. And they're not people? She said that right in front of Doc.
Saturday Night Live just lit a match, and Rachel Zegler added gasoline. That's not an exaggeration. One of the most recognizable faces in young Hollywood just got dragged in front of a national audience, live on TV. The parody wasn't subtle, it wasn't sweet, and it definitely wasn't flattering. But what happened after the sketch aired is where things got seriously explosive. Rachel Zegler, known for her breakout in West Side Story and set to star in Disney's upcoming Snow White, didn't just roll with the punchline like most stars would. Instead, she clapped back, hard. In a now-deleted tweet, Zegler slammed the sketch as inappropriate, and almost instantly the internet fractured into chaos. Some fans rallied to her side. Others dragged her for being, quote, the most humorless actress in Hollywood. It was less of a conversation and more of a digital war zone. But why did this sketch hit so hard? Why did Rachel's response trigger such an extreme reaction? And more importantly, how did something meant to be comedy end up as yet another PR disaster for a star already battling a growing wave of backlash? Because this isn't just about a comedy sketch. This is about public image, fan loyalty, celebrity fragility, and what happens when the internet decides it's done giving you second chances. And trust me, everyone has an opinion. When Saturday Night Live dropped its latest episode, no one expected Rachel Zegler to be the evening's biggest target. But that's exactly what happened. The sketch didn't pull punches. In fact, it doubled down on the growing public narrative that Zegler has become smug, disconnected, and maybe even a little too comfortable in her rising fame. The sketch opened with portraying a hyper-exaggerated version of Rachel promoting Snow White, only this version wasn't charming or bubbly. She was rolling her eyes, ranting about how the original fairy tale was problematic, and tossing backhanded comments at fans who just don't get it. The fake Zegler mocked the idea of needing a prince, made jabs about fan culture, and even called Disney's critics man babies. Some viewers laughed, but many others didn't. Because this wasn't just random comedy, it was mirroring real things Zegler has actually said. In recent interviews, Rachel has gone on record saying the original Snow White was dated, that her character wouldn't be saved by a man, and that the film is about female empowerment. On paper, those are fair takes, but online, they didn't land so softly. So when SNL exaggerated that tone and cranked it to 11, audiences recognized what they were doing. It wasn't just a spoof, it was a roast, and it struck a nerve because the character they mocked didn't feel like fiction. It felt like her. To many fans, this sketch was SNL finally saying what others had whispered for months, that Zegler's attitude had shifted from empowering to condescending. Whether that's true or not is up for debate, but the perception was out there, and perception is everything. But what made this whole situation really explode was what Rachel did next. Most stars take parodies in stride. Getting roasted by SNL is almost a rite of passage. Some even see it as a compliment. But Rachel Zegler didn't laugh this one off. Within hours of the sketch airing, Zegler fired off a post on X, formerly Twitter, accusing the show of promoting inappropriate caricatures and contributing to what she called a culture of mockery that punishes women for having an opinion. The tweet was blunt, it was emotional, and it was deleted quickly, but not quickly enough. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Before the sun even came up the next morning, hashtags were trending. Some of them were sympathetic, but many were brutal. Zegler meltdown, can't take a joke, and the especially viral #snowsnark. It was clear. Rachel's attempt to reclaim the narrative had backfired spectacularly. Why did it go so wrong? Part of it comes down to timing. Rachel's already been in the spotlight for her blunt takes on Disney, social correctness, and even original Snow White. Her past interviews had already painted her as someone who doesn't filter her thoughts. So when she called the sketch inappropriate, critics saw it not as a defense, but as another moment of thin-skinned outrage. And then there's the tweet itself. The language she used, talking about being punished for having an opinion, struck many as ironic. To the average viewer, the SNL sketch was her opinion, played back to her, and she didn't like how it sounded. Deleting the tweet only made things worse. Instead of softening the blow, it made her look reactive, like she wasn't standing by her words. And when you delete something in the middle of a controversy, people assume guilt, whether it's there or not. But this wasn't just about a single post. It was about what that post represented. To her critics, it was another example of Rachel seeing herself as above criticism. To her fans, it was proof that comedy still has a bias problem, especially when it comes to women with strong opinions. The clash was instant, and both sides were ready to go to war. If Rachel Zegler thought the sketch was brutal, the internet's reaction made it look like a warm-up act. The moment screenshots of her now-deleted tweet hit the timeline, it was like lighting a fuse. TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, everyone had something to say, and most of it wasn't kind. Some called her a Hollywood snowflake. Others labeled her the new face of diva culture. But the common thread? That that she just couldn't take a joke. The memes came fast. Edits of the SNL sketch were stitched together with clips from Zegler's old interviews, painting her as someone who speaks freely but melts down when anyone speaks back. A TikTok with over 2 million views showed her defending her modern take on Snow White, followed immediately by Jack Black's smug impression, then her tweet about discrimination. The caption? Can't make this up. The phrase Rachel Zegler can't take a joke started popping up everywhere, on YouTube thumbnails, on podcast titles, even as punchlines in unrelated tweets. She became a meme and not the kind that wins you more fans. But not everyone was laughing. In fact, some people agreed with her. They pointed out that male actors get spoofed all the time, but rarely with the same level of backlash. They asked why Rachel was being portrayed as smug when male stars with opinions are called bold or brave. Was the sketch just comedy, or was it punching down? This split created a new kind of storm, one where you weren't just picking sides on a joke. You were picking sides on what comedy is allowed to do and who it's allowed to mock. Some users called out the double standard. When Kanye gets mocked, it's satire. When Rachel claps back, she's a problem. Others insisted it had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with how she's handled fame. Regardless of where people landed, one thing was clear. This wasn't just another viral moment. It was a full-blown identity crisis. Fans and critics weren't just debating what happened. They were debating what it meant. And underneath all the noise, one uncomfortable question kept coming up. Was Rachel Zegler simply misunderstood? Or was this the latest in a pattern she couldn't shake? Let's be honest, celebrities get parodied all the time. That's nothing new. From Beyonce to Johnny Depp, no one's untouchable. But this hit Rachel Zegler harder. And the reason why? It's not just about the sketch, it's about the buildup. Because long before SNL sketch, Rachel had already been fighting a reputation she never seemed to want, but couldn't escape. It started subtly. In early interviews for Snow White, Rachel made headlines by calling the original fairy tale weird and not something little girls should be watching anymore. She framed her new role as an empowerment story, but the way she said it, blunt, unapologetic, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. She wasn't just criticizing a movie, she was criticizing nostalgia, and that's sacred ground on the internet. From there, it snowballed. Every interview clip became fuel. Every comment was dissected. People began to say she hated the movie she was paid to promote. They called her ungrateful, pretentious, even anti-fan. And here's the thing, Rachel never really walked it back. She doubled down. She defended her words. She claimed people were twisting her statements. And in doing so, she unintentionally created a version of herself that people wanted to parody. Strong-willed, sure, but also smug, defensive, and totally unaware of her own public perception. So when SNL finally turned that perception into a character, it didn't feel random. It felt earned, like the sketch was holding up a mirror to everything fans already thought they saw. But the deeper issue? It wasn't just that Rachel looked thin-skinned, it was that she reacted exactly the way her critics predicted she would. Instead of surprising them with humor or self-awareness, she confirmed their worst assumptions. And that's where this story shifts from controversy to career risk. Because when the public starts to believe you can't laugh at yourself, you stop being relatable. And once you stop being relatable, especially in Hollywood, the clock starts ticking. The sketch may have lasted 5 minutes, but the damage, that could linger for much, much longer. At this point in the story, it's easy to ask, was the backlash really about the sketch? Or was it the final straw in a long chain of moments that have slowly chipped away at Rachel Zegler's public image? Because this isn't the first time Rachel has landed in hot water over her words. And every time it happens, the response gets a little harsher. Let's rewind. When Zegler was first cast as Snow White, the internet was already tense. A Latina actress taking on the role of a traditionally white princess? That alone sparked endless online debate. But instead of playing it safe, Rachel leaned into controversy. In early press rounds, she made statements that many saw as combative, not just toward the film's history, but toward fans themselves. She dismissed the original Snow White as weird, dated, and implied the prince character was borderline predatory. She emphasized that her version of the character doesn't dream of true love, but instead dreams of being a leader. Again, valid talking points. But the way she delivered them came off as dismissive of anyone who enjoyed the classic tale. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Her tone in interviews often felt condescending, like she was educating the audience rather than connecting with them. Even when her points were reasonable, the delivery alienated fans. That's when the first wave of backlash started. YouTubers made commentary videos. TikToks were filled with sarcastic takes. Subreddits began tracking Zegler moments. So by the time the SNL sketch dropped, many viewers were already carrying baggage. They didn't see a one-time overreaction. They saw a pattern. But is it really that simple? Some say no, that Rachel's every word is unfairly scrutinized because she's a young, outspoken woman in a skeptical industry. They point out that other actors have said worse, done worse, and laughed off parodies that were far more savage. And maybe that's true. Maybe the backlash isn't about her tone at all, but about what she represents. A changing Hollywood that's more socially correct, more progressive, and less nostalgic for the past. So, is Rachel digging her own hole? Or is she being dragged down by a culture that loves to see women rise then fall? That's the question her defenders are asking, and the one her critics aren't even considering. Just when the internet seemed unified in its roasting, something shifted. A counter-narrative emerged, and it came from a different corner of the web. One that wasn't interested in comedy or cancel culture, but in fairness. Because while Zegler was being mocked for her reaction, others started asking, wait, wasn't the sketch kind of mean? On TikTok, creators began dissecting the SNL segment frame by frame. One viral post pointed out that the parody didn't just mock Rachel's interviews, it exaggerated her into a caricature of an angry, clueless mean girl. It's not just a joke, the creator said. It's punching down on a young woman who dared to have an opinion. That video alone got over 600,000 likes. Other users chimed in, saying the sketch did feel like it crossed a line, especially when you consider how rarely male stars get this kind of treatment. When a male actor speaks up or gets social, it's often brushed off. When Rachel does it, she gets a parody that turns her into a meme. Even some journalists joined the debate. Think pieces popped up on blogs and media outlets, asking whether the backlash said more about the audience than about Zegler herself. One article put it bluntly, "We tell women to speak up, then punish them when they do." And then there's the deeper question. If SNL had done the same sketch about a male actor, one who challenged the traditional values of a beloved franchise, would the reaction be this loud or this personal? That's where Rachel's defenders dug in. They argued that she wasn't being too sensitive. She was responding to a public system that constantly mocks women in power, especially if they're young, outspoken, or unapologetically different. To them, Zegler wasn't the problem. She was the lightning rod. Of course, not everyone agreed, but the defense gave her a new layer of public support, one that made the story more complicated, more divisive, and more emotional. Because now it wasn't just about a celebrity who couldn't take a joke. It was about whether we, as a culture, are too quick to turn confidence into arrogance and disagreement into offense. By now, the dust had barely settled, but the damage was already done. Rachel Zegler, once hailed as a rising star with the world at her feet, was now at the center of a spiraling conversation that had moved far beyond a comedy sketch. This wasn't just about SNL anymore. It was about her brand, her identity, and how much goodwill she still had with the public. The truth is, perception in Hollywood is everything, and once you start to lose control of that narrative, it's hard to get it back. Just months earlier, Rachel was the face of a major Disney reboot. She was positioned as the new generation's Snow White, bold, modern, and empowered. But now, thanks to a combination of controversial interviews, social media misfires, and a backlash that exploded online, her image was in freefall. It wasn't just fans turning on her, it was the media. Headlines framed her as ungrateful, entitled, and hard to work with. Dangerous labels in an industry that still operates behind closed doors and off-whispered reputations. Insiders began speculating about how Disney would handle the marketing of Snow White moving forward. Would they scale back her presence, re-edit interviews, shift focus to co-stars, or the visuals of the film instead? Some even whispered that studios might hesitate to cast her in future projects, not because of her talent, but because she'd become divisive. And divide is risky business when you're spending $200 million on a movie. Even her allies in the industry went quiet. There were no public statements defending her from A-listers, no celebrities tweeting in her support. That silence? It said everything. It's not that she's been banned, not yet, but the red flags are waving. Because in today's hyper-connected world, it only takes one bad moment to start a narrative. And if that narrative sticks, it can outlast talent, box office numbers, or even time. Rachel Zegler may still have a shot at redemption, but after the SNL moment, the question is no longer whether she'll rise again. It's whether audiences want her to. So what are we really looking at here? A celebrity who couldn't take a joke? A sketch that went too far? Or a culture that's lost the ability to handle gray areas, where you're either a victim or a villain, with no room in between? Rachel Zegler's clash with SNL is about more than just comedy. It's about the razor-thin line public figures walk in the digital age. Say too little, and you're called boring. Say too much, and you're branded arrogant. Laugh along, and you're a pushover. Push back, and you're a diva. What happened with Zegler could have happened to almost any rising star with strong opinions. But because of her past controversies, the backlash landed with extra weight. The sketch didn't create the storm, it just gave it shape. And Rachel's reaction? It didn't start the fire, but it definitely added fuel. Here's the uncomfortable truth. In 2025, being a celebrity isn't just about acting or singing or talent. It's about narrative management. And when that narrative starts slipping out of your hands, even a single deleted tweet can change everything. So, whether you think she was right or wrong, whether you laughed at the sketch or cringed at the fallout, one thing is certain. This wasn't just a parody. It was a moment, and like all viral moments, it won't be forgotten anytime soon. But what happens next? That's up to Rachel, and whether she's finally ready to play the game Hollywood actually expects her to.